4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We cannot afford to wait.
The anthem highlights key moments in the fight for equality and voting rights here in the United States for people of color, especially African Americans, for women, and for even those who have been incarcerated. It's important for us to recognize that our vote is our power to effect change. There are so many changes that we seek in terms of healthcare and education, in terms of meaningful reforms to the justice system and improvements in community policing, addressing issues of poverty and the environment. The way to really address those concerns is through making our voices heard at the ballot box.
One of the issues this time round that we know happened last time round in the 2016 election was voter suppression, specifically targeted at African American communities.
Some people have raised the question, why are you saying we have a right to vote? That right is guaranteed. That was fought and won many years ago. It's like, yeah, on paper, you're correct. But there are all kinds of efforts that are put into practice to suppress the vote or to deny the right that we have to vote. The Honorable John Lewis said the vote is the most powerful nonviolent tool that we have in a democratic society. And I think that's a powerful message for us.
You can applaud. The recording you just heard is an excerpt from a 3-minute interview that I did on BBC World Service Newsday on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. The song featured in the recording is a voting rights anthem that I composed titled, "I Have a Right to Vote." Released as a public service announcement on August 16th of that same year, I Have a Right to Vote features a stellar cast of celebrities: Billy Porter, Billie Jean King, Carla Hall, Christopher Jackson, Hill Harper, Ebony Joanne, Ryan Jamal Swain, along with groups of American citizens gathered in iconic places across our land, from the Hollywood sign to Times Square, all decrying voter suppression tactics and affirming the 15th Amendment. The song and viral video would go on to reach 2 million global hits and receive multiple awards. The story of how this citizen artist was invited to speak to an international audience about American democracy on Election Day 2020 is a sterling example of how powerful music and the arts can be as tools that draw inspiration from and give meaning to our world and our worldview. Now, for those who don't know me, never heard my name before, it's okay, you're not familiar with my work, I am a multi-hyphenate creative, producer, composer, filmmaker, curator, musicologist, and more. For me, the term multi-hyphenate, and trust me, I have friends who tease me about that term all the time, but that term has nothing to do with wanting to or needing to impress, and everything to do with this insatiable curiosity I have for finding new ways to innovate, especially when it comes to creatively exploring the cultural traditions of my community and calling attention to matters of social justice. So today, I just want to speak from my experience, if that's okay. And I want to thank Edward Jones, I want to thank Sterling Freeman, I want to thank Olivia Hill, thank you for that beautiful introduction, for facilitating my being here. And I want to thank the members of this community who have shown up since I arrived yesterday to welcome me into this space, and I do feel welcome. I want to thank Errol and Adora that are part of the African American Heritage House community. I want to thank Steve Zenzak and Pat Fan and Andrew Camden, with whom I had dinner last evening, and Shirley and Robert Silkey, with whom I'll have dinner this evening. I am honored to be here at Chautauqua for the first time, and I am grateful for the tremendous hospitality that has been extended. And while I'm extending gratitude, let me thank all of you for being with me today. Thank you. I love it. I love it. I cannot remember the year, but I vividly remember the setting. I was in LA, which is where I was born. I was working on some project, though I can't remember what project that was. You know, at some point they all just run together. I was staying in the guest house of my friend Norman Lear, who we lost in December of last year. That wasn't my first time hanging out at Norman's place. Through the years, he and Lynn have been quite gracious about opening their home to me. We were seated at Norman's kitchen table having breakfast, and Norman was offering his wise perspective on the state of affairs in the world. And Norman always had a perspective on the state of affairs in the world. And somewhere in the middle of Norman's commentary, he offered these words that have resonated ever since. Here's what Norman said, quote, "Nolan, if the world is going to be redeemed, it's going to be through the arts," end quote. To be clear, Norman's words were not formative for me. They were actually clarifying. They resonated because they helped me give clearer definition to the work I had already been doing for so many years, especially through my company, New Works Productions. When I founded New Works in 2003, my aim was to conceive and produce artistic projects that moved beyond mere entertainment. I believed then and now that music and the arts can be leveraged for community impact. So I defined our New Works mission with these four aims: to commemorate, to educate, to uplift, and to inspire. Our commitment to educate has centered around exposing audiences and young people to new or broader concepts, using the arts to make the learning process accessible and fun. Like the multiple citywide festivals we curated with the Mann Center in Philadelphia over a 6-year period, the Philadelphia Freedom Festival, Liberty Unplugged, New Frontiers, Firebird Spirit Rising, Bernstein Beyond the Baton. These festivals illumined issues of race and social justice, explored the intersectionality of arts and science, and brought diverse communities together while inspiring generations of young scholars. Our education mission has been closely aligned with our commitment to commemoration because we pride ourselves on highlighting historical figures and happenings, like our documentary on the complicated history of our nation's capital, Becoming Douglas Commonwealth, which I'm proud to say has won 10 media awards, including 3 gold prizes. Other commemorative projects we have launched have focused on unsung histories of people like Octavius Catto, who I like to say was king a full century before Martin Luther King Jr. was king, or the 272 enslaved African Americans who were sold by the Jesuits in 1838 to save Georgetown University. Our mission to uplift has been centered around what my friend Mark Bamuthi Joseph, who's Vice President of Social Impact at the Kennedy Center, calls using the arts to produce non-arts outcomes. And through the years, we have collaborated with a number of humanitarian organizations like the American Cancer Society and Susan B. Komen and Goodwill and Vital Voices and Bread for the City and more to do just that. Our mission to inspire has had everything to do with creating works that lift the spirit, especially at a time when our spirits could use some lifting, huh? From our West Side, South Side touring photographic exhibition to our Broadway-bound musical Grace, our work always aims to awaken the spirit and to help us find inspiration, even at times when it's tough to find the spirit in inspiration. So that's been our work and mission. And while I have been clear about that work and mission since I founded New Works, Norman's words have provoked me to consider a broader theme, that of salvation, redemption. A theme that has led me to a critical question of self-reflection. Develop works that educate, commemorate, uplift, and inspire. To what end? For what purpose? And that path of self-reflection has yielded this broader understanding. The new works we develop as a company must aid in the redemption of humanity and our world. That is, as I define it, they must usher people and things to a better state of existence. This talk of redemption connects profoundly with my upbringing. I mean, at heart, I'm a church boy, y'all. I'm a PK, and for those of you who don't know what that is, how many of you know what that is? I love it. Of course, at Chautauqua, most of you know what a PK is. For those of you, we won't keep you in the dark if you don't. It's a preacher's kid. I'm a preacher's kid. More specifically, I am the son of a Baptist minister. I'm also the grandson of 2 Baptist ministers, both sides. I'm the great-grandson of 2 Baptist ministers, both sides. I'm the brother of 2 Baptist ministers. Y'all see a pattern here? The nephew and the cousin of many Baptist ministers. Needless to say, I know a little something about church. And I recognize that daring to talk about redemption outside of a church context is for some risky business. I love the sounds of Chautauqua. I recognize talking about redemption outside of a church context for some can be risky business. But I've seen firsthand the impact music can have on the most disparate gatherings of persons. I saw it in late July, early August 2012 in Cairo, Egypt, when I led a cultural envoy of inspirational artists for the US State Department. We were there representing America at the International Sama Festival for Spiritual Music and Sufi Chanting. We joined groups from countries all around the world. One evening, we did a concert of inspirational music at a performance hall near the Khan el-Khalili Bazaar. And when we finished performing, a young Egyptian brother came up to me stern-faced and stated brashly, "I hate Americans." In that moment, I knew this exchange was either going to go extremely right or extremely left. There was no middle ground there. And as he continued speaking, the translator shared what he meant. He spoke these words to this effect. Before this moment, I had never been able to separate American people from American policies. But listening to you all sing tonight, I recognize how connected we are. He actually went further to say, I recognize and feel that the same God you're singing about is the same God I pray to. He spoke those words, and then we embraced. Reflecting upon that moment even now, 12 years later, I'm still overwhelmed by the impact we had on that young brother. And I wonder if there's any other context in which an American and an Egyptian could have met and found common ground, moving in 60 minutes from hatred to a hug, other than a kind of performance hall experience. I don't recall the name of that performance place, but I will never forget its function. It was a place of connection. It was a place of transcendence. It was a place of peace. In every sense of the word, our musical presentation had transformed that performance hall into a sanctuary. A sanctuary. Consider the broader implications here, because even within our own country, there are few settings where we can get persons of opposing perspectives to assemble peaceably these days. Partisan rancor fills our state and federal legislatures. Partisan divides define our friend groups, our hangout spots, our organizational memberships, even our churches. Where are our places of connection and peace despite our differences? I contend they are our performance halls, our art galleries, our sports and concert arenas, and our movie and lively arts theaters. These places are our potential safe spaces, and depending upon how we put them to use, they become our sanctuaries. I shared with you a few minutes ago that I am a church boy at heart, unashamed, pretty darn proud actually. And in my experience, sanctuary is not simply defined as a safe space. It is also a place of soul searching that provokes growth. And that soul searching is enabled because sanctuaries have a way of relaxing our guards. When the lights go down and the music starts, they have a way of letting down our defenses, opening us up to hear, to see, to consider, to expand. Art sanctuaries are places where hope abounds that change is possible. Not to coerce others to think the way we think or believe what we believe, but to at least usher them to a threshold of understanding, a different perspective, and affirming the right for that different perspective to be. And this is essential because to maintain a civil society, we need places where viewpoints can be presented without judgment and coercion to elicit mutual respect, something that is sorely missing from our politics these days. So, if in fact music and the arts have that intrinsic power, the question is, what are those of us who are practitioners, performers, producers, what are we doing with this power? Are we harnessing it or are we squandering it? The easiest thing in the world to do is to write a song for the sake of writing a song. My friends and I sometimes, those who kind of agree with my mindset, we joke about the fact that we could be household names and would have made a whole lot of money if we had made some different decisions. The easiest thing to do is to write a song with a good beat, funky chords, and vocal calisthenics, and there's nothing wrong with that. The harder task, and I argue the more noble task, is writing a song or creating any form of art and infusing that art with purpose. To be clear, the question of harnessing or squandering our power as creatives is not new, but the question must be renewed now, given how easy it is to be drawn into commercialized entertainment and to be practitioners of the status quo. Here's how I maintain focus. I draw inspiration from the innovators of freedom songs, who recognized the power that music had to provoke change. Their adopted and adapted songs like I Shall Not Be Moved, songs like Woke Up This Morning with My Mind Stayed on Freedom, songs like Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around. Those songs fueled the civil rights movement, marches and protests, sit-ins and boycotts across the American South. Those innovators, so many of whom were Black, harnessed the power of their songs to inspire activism, promote unity, give voice to the marginalized, and literally arrest the attention of a nation. I also draw inspiration from two other memories that stand out from my lived experience. First, I'm old enough to remember, and I'm dating myself here, when industry artists came together in an unprecedented manner to support African famine relief. And let me tell you, in the 80s, that was kind of a novel and radical concept. It was Harry Belafonte who cast the vision, and it was Michael Jackson, I see heads nodding, and Lionel Richie who wrote what would become the quadruple platinum hit song, We Are the World. Y'all remember that? Never before had we seen the harnessing of star power in that way. That song project raised more than $80 million, which is about $250 million in today's economy. And the humanitarian impact of that song not only shaped the world, but it deeply influenced the impressionable young man you see standing before you today. For me, We Are the World was one of those seminal life-shaping experiences. So too was my first and only time seeing Gil Scott-Heron in concert on the campus of Oberlin College during my student days. Honestly, I didn't know much about Gil Scott-Heron before that day, but it only took a few minutes and a few bars of music, a few minutes of time, a few bars of music, for me to recognize Gil Scott-Heron wasn't your typical kind of artist. I'll never forget the social commentary he dropped in a manner that was so smooth, yet so courageous. This is what Heron said. There used to be an agreement between the seasons. I mean, they agreed that they were going to just come and stay about 3 months each, and then they would go to wherever seasons go. And then one year in America, one of the seasons got mad and decided it was going to stay. We have been taken over by the season of ice. Very few people recognize it for what it is. Lord knows it's winter in America. Gil Scott-Heron, like Belafonte, Jackson, and Ritchie, like the innovators of the freedom songs, like others I could mention, like Stevie Wonder and Sweet Honey in the Rock, they all helped me to understand that the art I create, the art I produce, should be inspired by what's going on in our world and our communities, but not only should it be inspired by what's going on, it should have something to say about it. That's how the first song that I shared with you was conceived. That's how so much of my work has been composed. Allow me to share 2 more examples, and then I'll bring this sharing to a close. First, I want to return to an earlier mentioned reference from 2016. When I learned about the 272 enslaved persons sold to save Georgetown University, how many of you remember the New York Times article? I was immediately inspired, once I got past my shock, to compose the song in 2016, We Choose to Remember. That's not what I want to share. I introduced this song in the Kennedy Center Concert Hall on January 16th, 2017, as part of our annual Let Freedom Ring concert commemorating the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I've been music producer of that program since 2003. After its premiere, it became a central theme song for the Georgetown University community as the campus reckoned with its sordid past. In fact, when the university invited the descendants of those enslaved to the campus for a liturgy of remembrance, contrition, and hope, and a dedication ceremony of the Isaac Hawkins and Anne Marie Beecraft Halls, the lyrics and a commemorative CD of this song were placed in the program book. We honor the names of the unnamed. Lift up our song for the unsung. Dare to declare that their lives weren't for naught. We choose to remember because we can't afford to forget. Here's a second example I want to lift up. In just about 10 days, I'm preparing to release a new call to action anthem titled Rise Up and Fight. This anthem is not going to be released commercially. It's not going to be sold. We're releasing it as an audiovisual PSA because what matters most is that we spread its message. Rise Up and Fight is inspired by the 60th anniversary of Freedom Summer, which is this year. The song is written from the perspective of the 3 civil rights workers murdered by the Ku Klux Klan in 1964. You know their names, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner. In the song, these 3 martyrs returned to Mississippi 60 years later, expecting a world of change, only to find that things are as bad, if not worse, than when they left. And they issue an urgent call to action to all of us. We've come too far to just resign. Too many folks gave up their lives. Today's the day, now is the time to rise and fight for what is right. Let me give you a sneak preview of the song that's about to be released.
Behind, work together to find a path for all ships to freedom's destiny rise, and all with the same chance to prosper and thrive.
You want to change Mississippi, or wherever you may be, you gotta get involved so you can say what's happening.
You can't afford to stand by.
Or be
discouraged not to try.
You wanna know why? I'll say it again in case you missed it the last time you see me. Too far to just resign.
Folks gave up their lives. Today's the day, now is the time.
Check it. Freedom Summer is more than an idea.
We're releasing this song with a fully animated music video because we especially want to reach the young potential voters in our country. We're releasing it as a part of a comprehensive Get Out the Vote campaign that my company is launching called Freedom Advances. We're producing with Freedom Advances a slate of media assets, including celebrity bumpers, 30 to 60-second PSAs, 2 call to action anthems with corresponding music videos, and a multifaceted viral video challenge spearheaded by leading artists and online influencers on all the social media platforms, TikTok, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Our assets will be distributed online and in collaboration with media networks like Radio One, Reach Media, Black America Web, and more. And conservatively, we are estimating the reach of this campaign will be 5 to 7 million. And in this moment, I will not be shy in saying to do this work, we need to grow our circle of support. And so I invite you to go to newworks with 1w.us, NEWORKS.us. to see how you can be a part of what we're doing, or see me today if you're motivated to help. In fact, today we launched a GoFundMe campaign to support some of the work that we're doing. So if you'll allow a few more moments of transparency, I want to end by sharing this final thought. In preparing this lecture, I found it meaningful to reflect upon the question of how my commitment to humanitarian and social justice activism was ignited. Yeah, We Are the World was an impetus, but what was it that really triggered me to really want to get involved, or to see the potential of getting involved? It's not a question I had previously considered. My reflections took me back to the first week of my undergraduate tenure at Oberlin College and Conservatory. And believe it or not, the first life-shaping lesson of my college career happened within the first few days of me arriving on campus, and it happened outside of the classroom setting. I was in my North Hall dormitory room. My door was open at the time, when several students who I did not know came running by. They were making such a commotion that I peeked around the corner to see what was going on. I think I may have asked, "What's going on?" or something to that effect. But I know for certain that one of the students just responded, "Come on!" In that moment, I faced a decision. Do I take off running with folk I don't know, or do I stay in my room? But considering that the cause of their running could have impacted my personal safety and well-being, I left my room and chased them down until I caught up with them. I'm not even sure that I closed and locked my door. I just took off running. First behind them, then when I had caught up with them, I summoned the courage to ask, "Why are we running?" And one of them replied, "To take over Cox." Now, given that I was a new student, I had just arrived on campus, I had no idea what that meant. So while still maintaining stride with them, I had to ask for clarification, to which they responded, "The A building." It wasn't until we had arrived at Cox, joining hundreds of other students who literally filled every hallway, every open office, every inch of that building, that I realized that we had taken over the college's administration building. And as I stood there, this scrawny little black kid from DC, who had graduated from an all-male military Catholic high school, I was deeply torn. I mean, I had been raised to respect authority. And here I was smack dab in the middle of a real rebellion, the ultimate show of defiance. Add to that, when I summoned the courage to ask why we were there, I didn't understand the response. That's when two brothers, one white, I believe his name was Doug, the other black, I remember his name is Malcolm Cash, proceeded to educate me on the history of South African apartheid and the urgent need for institutions like Oberlin to divest. It was my first college lesson, and it happened before I ever walked into a classroom. We filled the halls of the A building, lifting our voices in conversation, in shouts, and yes, in song. It was my first college lesson, and it opened my eyes. It literally changed my whole world and my worldview in that one moment. And it was the wake-up call that would eventually inspire the realization that using my art to make a difference was something I could do, something I must do. And for the rest of the days, the rest of my days, I am clear about my assignment to produce and to motivate others to produce and support art that redeems, ushering disparate people and a despairing world to a better state of existence. Gratitude.